Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us here today. We're going to give people a few minutes to join and get settled. As you arrive and come in the room, I would invite you to use the attendee chat to say hello. Maybe give your name and where you're from, just so that we can see you and say hello, and you can greet your other participants. And we'll get started in just a minute. Make sure that you use everyone for the chat. If you there's a little drop-down menu. Otherwise, it'll just go to us. As people are coming in and saying hello, I just want to say thank you to Curtis and Gary for being here today. They're going to be our presenters for the art of open web curation, tools all librarians can use. We're thrilled to have them. Curtis and Gary have presented several times, both at Charleston and virtually for webinars. So thanks to both of you for being here again today.
Sure. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Sandra. Okay. Well, a few announcements just very quickly as we're getting started here. This session is being recorded. I think Zoom's pretty good about notifying all of us for those things now. A link will be sent to the video within 2 days for everyone who's registered. So whether you're attending or whether you have to leave early or you miss part of it, you'll get a full recording of the whole session. We're going to be saving questions to the end. Curtis and Gary, this is going to be a very interactive session from what I understand. They've got some real fun things planned for us. But we'll save Q&A mostly till the end, and you can use the attendee chat for that or the Q&A button either way. And we'll have a very short attendee evaluation. It's very important to us to hear from you about how we're doing with these webinars. We like to hear from you about the content, suggestions for future speakers, all of that. So it's like a 5-question survey that'll pop up as soon as we're finished. And if you could take a moment to fill that out, we would really appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Curtis, who's our moderator today. So thank you very much, Curtis. Take it away, INFOdjs.
All right. Hey, everyone. All right. So I'm going to throw a question for all of you in chat. And the question's in a unique format. It's called if you're a Scrum nerd, if you've been around Agile teams, it's called a user story. And it has a little template. As a fill in your role, this webinar will help me what you're hoping to learn, and so that is the why. So Sophia, no problem. Hey, don't have a camera, but that's cool if you can answer that question. So the role is, what hat you wearing today? You're coming in as a publisher, a librarian, general public, anything. So what role are you coming in at? What are you hoping to learn, and what's the why? What will that help you do if you could learn this art of curation, open web curation? Love to just hear that in the room right now. So Joseph, librarian. Figured we'd have a few librarians, Gary, today with us.
Just a few.
But the Charleston ecosystem is vast, and there are vendors and there are publishers. And great. Thank you, Sophia, as a student employee at a library. And let us know what you're hoping to learn. What will art of open web curation help you do in your context as a student? Just good for Gary and I to hear that as we get started here. I see a few familiar names. I see Ann Ralston. Hello, Ann. I'm sure, Gary, you recognize a few names there in the participant list, the attendees.
Let's see who we have.
Great. She says, Sophia is looking to find and guide others with open source resources. You are in the right place, Sophia. That is exactly what we're going to do here today. Okay.
I'll give a shout out to my friend Mike Ladden.
Nice.
We'll give him a shout out.
Kate says, here we got some of these coming in. They're filling out this user story beautifully. As a research librarian, I'm always open to learning about good sources of information on the web. Patricia Barron says that. Kate, as a reference and instruction librarian, this webinar will help me effectively develop online learning guides so that, wow, you did the full template, so that I can help students with their research. Thank you, Kate. Good, good, good. Excellent. All right. So Gary, I'm going to go ahead and share our screen. Mostly this is going to be Gary's show, but I'm going, as Leah said, help facilitate that. So let me just pull up. We have just a few slides to get us started, and then a lot of it's going to be showing, demoing, kind of, you're really going to get a little bit of a behind the scenes look here at this I call Gary a little bit of the mad scientist, and that's why, even though we're talking the art of open web curation, there's some science, there's some real rigor and methodology to it too. And I hope we can impart both of those things, as I've learned through working with my buddy here, and it's the reason why I've enjoyed literally building now a new venture with him, is that he thinks differently than I do. I'm an innovation coach. I work with teams. I do agile coaching, and one of the things I discovered years ago, Gary, before I think we even met at ALA the first time, I was on the same email list as Gary. And it's Read 20, if you're wondering, Read 2.0 that Peter Brantley hosts. And I said to Peter, who is this Gary Price? Because who's this guy that keeps finding the good stuff over and over again? And Gary is just, if you all know, give some love to Gary. Some of you in the room know this about this guy, right? He knows how to find not only the good stuff, but he knows that you need that. And that's what's so clairvoyant and crazy about it, because he will find just what I didn't even know I needed it. And all of a sudden, he's got that for me. So, Gary, you want to just say hi? Have I embarrassed you enough?
Yeah, I don't think the camera is showing how red my face is right now, but thank you, Curtis. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here from a rainy and cold Washington, D.C. Curtis is enjoying probably a nice warm day in Orlando, Florida. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, and Curtis will talk a little bit more about this in a second, in addition to doing, INFOdocket and ARL Day in Review and being a private curation source for a bunch of other people and doing some consulting work and so on and so forth, we have started our own business together. So why don't I segue back to you? Yep. And you talk a little bit about that, and I'll drop some links into the chat.
Thank you. Thanks, if you would. The first one I'd like you to put in is Open Web Tools. This is something just published. So we curate and publish a few open tools and resources. And this one is, how would you describe Open Web Tools, Gary? What's your definition?
These are, and yes, I'm glad you said what's my definition, and our definition now is things of high reference value that I've been collecting and that we continue to update, resources on the open web. Are they truly OER? Are they truly open in the strictest sense? Perhaps not, but the rule is that in 99% of the cases there, the end user does not have to take out a credit card to actually pay and use the resource itself.
Right, right. So that's a list that Gary's been curating for a while. A new one that we've been working on recently is the Think Tanks directory. And Gary, if you can put that one in, this is a combination of, if you will, maybe two open data sets. One is from onthinktanks.org, and they published a big global think tank directory, but we also matched that data up with the work from the University of Pennsylvania, from their Think Tank Civil Societies program out of University of Pennsylvania. And Gary, that was a fun process, and that allowed us to really tag that think tank directory with the University of Pennsylvania's top think tanks, international global think tanks.
We enhanced it, and that's another open resource that we're making available to everyone. And both of those are linked at the URL that you'll see the URL I've already put into chat, and then I'll put in a couple of others as Curtis continues.
And not this is the most back padding we're going to do here, people. But if you wouldn't mind, give us a shout out, give us a solid there at INFOdj1. That's our Twitter address. And if you want to share those open web tools, that's our hope. We want those to be clearly quality information resources available to decision makers, anyone that needs access to good quality stuff. So we'd be most grateful if you tweeted that out there and said, "Hey, there's a new directory." So thank you very much for that. The other things that we do is we provide just-in-time research for innovation sprints. That's kind of where INFOdj got started. Gary brought his library expertise and skills. I brought my coaching skills, and we've discovered that for teams that are really stretching, that are going for new business models, new visions, new opportunities, having a librarian at your side turns out to be pretty useful. The first client we tried it with, Bio1, someone you all know pretty well, bio1.org. We actually coined it, Gary. I think we called it a Gary scan, and it was quite effective in helping teams envision their future steps. We also obviously provide webinars, workshops, and consults. So that's about us. Enough of us and our back padding. So Gary, why don't you hit us with 3 big reasons why this open web curation thing is a big deal, especially for librarians?
Well, first and foremost, it's really nothing all that new. Open web curation is just applying, and what I do, this is about how I work on a day in, day out basis. This is just applying what I would call traditional librarian skills, mindsets, so on and so forth, in perhaps a more preemptive way, learning your audience and curating for them. And by the way, by curation, we're really focusing, there's really 2 different types in my mind as it relates to today's presentation. First, curation for an individual or for a group, perhaps sharing it with them via a newsletter or something as simple as an email. It's a great, and by the way, that's another reason I think this is so important. If for no other reason, this is a great way to market yourself and market your library, market your organization by providing resources, news, whatever, of value, and often in a just-in-time manner. Often keeping it current, sharing something that people haven't seen or they don't know. So for no other reason, this is a great way to market yourself. And if you were, for example, going to do a newsletter, this is in combination with whatever newsletter you might be doing already. In other words, instead of just saying, come and use this resource, that resource, we're having this speaker, also include some new open web resources in that mix. And by the way, too, I want to make another point. None of this is saying that traditional library database resources are no longer needed or important. I believe that the types of materials we're talking about on the open web could also be used in addition to those, either as a standalone database, in a newsletter, or for example, a see also or other recommended resources in an entry from a traditional database. So, because a lot of the things that we're talking about are reports, data sets, and the like that will eventually make themselves, will be cited in the research that people are having published in traditional journals. But you're getting to it years, in some cases, in advance. I will also want to I think it's also important to say that a lot of the material, for those of you who have been doing this for a while, a lot of the material that we're talking about here used to be called, and to this point is often referred to as gray literature. However, I'm not sure how gray it is anymore, because these are the types of resources that not that long ago were challenging, if not impossible, to get your hands on in a timely manner. Yes, you could send some emails or send snail mail. You would have to track down the right person. Well, now a lot of that material is available at the moment that it's published on the open web globally right now. And the idea is to capture it, get it all in one place. Curtis and I have used the term that we created a mindset of a data lake called Lake Trustworthy. But the first thing you have to do is understand the sources and get it all in one place.
Yep.
So
it's really a yes and. You're not saying subscription databases that these folks use every day are needed. You're saying that there's this extra layer of value you can add on top of this stuff.
On top of that, and
right.
If again, in relationship to you and to your organization, it's also, if for no other reason, a great tool to use as a marketing vehicle for your organization and for yourself.
Right. Gary, I dare say that if they take advantage of these techniques and do what you're saying, they will become INFOdjs. That's kind of what we do. That's what the whole name was about, right? Serving up the good stuff.
Serving up, spinning the good tunes, spinning the good info.
That's right. I think it's said really well by Greg Yao. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Kind of Greg Yao. He's president of Center for Research Libraries. I think this was recently an interview. Little shout out to ATG, the podcast here, those great podcasts that they're doing. And this was an interview with him, and he said, build collections and content that empower folks to ask many, many kinds of questions. And this is what we've discovered, and this is why it works in the innovation setting. You as the librarian can bring something new, some fresh insight, that gets people to ask questions they didn't even know they had. It's that unknown unknown, or sometimes call it open the Johari window, but that's your added value. That's going to be that secret sauce. And I think he's right on it there. Helps people ask better questions. So this is our business case for Open Web Curation. I think we're selling to an audience that's already pre-sold. So why don't we get right into it? And to do this right, we need to have kind of a scenario. So we've set one up here today. And the scenario we want to play with is this program out of ASU, Arizona State University. Dr. Robert Beard is part of the Center on Science and the Imagination. And let me just actually open that. Let me see if I bet that's not, I got to share another browser. Apologies. Let me go ahead and share. There we go. So here's their website. And Dr. Beard is currently doing a project called the Veterans Imagination Project, using the tools of narrative foresight to explore post-service career futures. So this is a kind of high-tech project, some virtual reality, maybe even some AI, a lot of things they're playing with, but they're helping service people and veterans imagine their next move, career development, their next life, if you will. And it's a very interesting program. So we wanted to have this as a container for today to say, let's just what if. All right, what if you're a librarian at ASU and Dr. Beard comes to you and says, hey, I'd like to get the word out about this program, but I also want to know what else is going on out in the world. What are other people doing that are my peers? And what are other things that are happening in and around veterans and that kind of stuff? So that's our context, if you will, that we want to use today. So go back to our keynote deck. Makes sense? And then we're going to have 3 sort of lessons: building up your source list, discovering new material, and organizing and disseminating. And this is the part I call extracting Gary's brain. So I'm just going to keep asking Gary questions. Gary, why did you do this? And I think hopefully this is how we'll learn how Gary does what he does and does it so well. Anything else, Gary, before we get into it?
And if you allow me to make one more point, Curtis,
yeah,
that I didn't make earlier. Really, one of the goals of all of this, no matter what you're doing, either building a collection, for a LibGuide and updating it on a regular basis, or just sending out a quick email to somebody, hey, Professor so-and-so, or hey, colleague so-and-so, this might be of interest to you. One of the underlying themes in my head as I do this is also bringing like things together, which is really, in my mind, part of what librarianship is all about. So it's presenting a package, it's adding to traditional resources with like things that people might not normally find, or it's so new that they haven't even had a chance to find it.
Yeah, exactly. So if that sounds good to everybody, and you can chime in on chat if you like this direction, just give us a thumbs up or yay. That's what we'll do. We're going to work with this scenario. What you want to do is wear a hat of how can I best help Dr. Beard in his program. We are servant leaders today. We want to serve up the good stuff, be good info DJs, and help him build that program. Sound right? Okay. All right, so here we go. So to build sources, Gary, is this sort of how your mind works? I tried to draw a mind map. Is this the way you? Tell me more about this. How you come up with these sources?
Well, one of the things is from the outset, is I'm using the personas method that people in your line of work, Curtis, often talk about. I'm trying to think, where would the resources be? What types of resources, and who that I know who I'm curating for, who are they, and what are the types of resources they would find useful? Are they looking for, new reports? Are they looking for the latest news? Are they looking for audio-visual materials? And remember, and that's important, that what we're talking about today on the open web is just not text-based. I believe libraries should be doing a better job of curating video or podcasts. So when it comes to video, both a blessing and a curse, I guess, depending on how you look at it, is that so much of it sits in one place. And one other important point that we get all of the time is, well, isn't this just available in Google and people could just get it from Google? Mm-hmm. Well, technically, a lot of this is in Google, but that doesn't mean just because it's in Google doesn't mean people are going to find it on a timely basis. And what we've seen over the years is that most people's search skills, taking advantage of some of the advanced search syntax that Google offers, is very, 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 very small. So in terms of building sources, I'm thinking about primary sources, if you like, news releases, the transcript of somebody giving a speech. I'm then thinking about trade publications. While there is not enough time in the day to get to every single organization's trade press, business press, often, and we've built a database of over nearly 2,000 sources
I think I'll show that. Why don't I go ahead and put that up here? This is code name Bethany. This is not yet something we're publishing out in the wild, because Gary, why do we call it Bethany, and what is this?
This started just because I'm such an info geek, as you like to call me, Curtis. And this is, I've often, long before I became a librarian, in the halls and in the, if you like, of the University of Kansas Library, where I went to undergrad, the Wayne State University Library, even my own public library when I was growing up outside of Chicago, I've often been fascinated by trade magazines or business press, if you like. And now most of those are available on the web. There are now only web-only publications. It's called Bethany because a couple of years ago, I was at Bethany Beach, Delaware for a week or so with my family. And while my wife and son were spending a little extra time at the beach, I was sitting by the pool just trying to assemble all of these trade publications that I knew about and I was discovering. And I started with maybe 5 or 10 the first day. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we are close to 2,000 in this database that Curtis and I have been building, and we're massaging it, and we're using this with our clients. And by the way, it's not only sharing news from these databases that's potentially useful and something that you could curate, but it's also using these resources to discover new resources that you can use elsewhere, whether it be a new report, a new interactive graphic, a new database, things like, these publications are covering things that pretty much nobody else is. And it's a great way because there's not enough time of the day to go to every single organization out there and start curating each and every one of them. So it kind of gives you a leg up.
I'm going to go, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to just bring up the set that we created. These are the sources that we built for our sandbox today, for this serving Dr. Beard in the program. So Gary, why don't you just kind of walk us through, maybe pick some of the ones that, and we'll explain a little bit later what Feedly and Website Watcher are. That's part 2 of our thing here. But this is the sources. This is kind of how we develop these sources for this.
So if we just start taking a look at some of these sources, well, first of all, would be things from the state of Arizona. So we obviously, if we might want to know if maybe there's a major project going on involving veterans. Very likely, if there is, or there's a new one coming, it will be announced by the governor's office or the state, the Arizona Department of Veteran Services. It will be announced on their webpage. So we should be monitoring that on a very regular, if not daily basis. So those are the types of sources. Then you move into, and it's important. We have one Twitter handle there, Amy Zhang. So what about social media? Where does it fall in? Well, again, this is how I work. This doesn't mean it's exactly the way that I recommend that you even work, but it's something that I do, is that I try to stay away from most social media. Don't get me wrong. I do have several Twitter feeds and the like coming into the different services that I use to bring it all together. But I have found going directly to the source, for example, the governor's office, versus relying on other people to talk about it, in the long run saves me time. Because as we all know, when you start reading Twitter stream after Twitter stream or Facebook entry after Facebook entry, it's easily to get distracted. To put it in information science terminology, there's a lot of potential noise in the channel. So while I do use some social media and follow some people and some organizations, I have found it better to go directly to the organization itself and monitor their news page or their president's webpage versus relying on social media. It's really a time issue there.
So Gary, I'm going to just call out a few that I think are important. Folks may not know, for example, that you can search podcasts and the whole universe of podcasts through this service.
Right. So Listen Notes is a podcast discovery tool. They have APIs if you like, but you can keyword search it. Now, you are not searching on every single word spoken, but it's a great tool, one, to find out if somebody appeared on a podcast, or just to discover a podcast on a particular topic in the first place. So,
and here we use this phrase. You'll see us use this phrase repeatedly: veterans and transition. And that was just Gary and I working together and finding that phrase was netting us kind of the sort of things we wanted to see.
Right.
How about news lookup?
News lookup is News lookup is a open web news search tool like Google News. It's just a different one with a different database, a different set of resources, a different relevancy algorithm. There is not one perfect tool. I have found on the open web news lookup to be one of the better open web resources out there to aggregate news. We can set up a keyword, we can search by keyword, and then we'll talk about later how we can monitor that without having to proactively go there every single moment of every day and have a photographic memory to remember what wasn't there the last time we looked.
Exactly. In this case, we tweak the search phrase veterans job. And what does this -AP mean? Why did we do that?
Well, one of the issues I'm sure you're all aware of as well with some new search tools is you get the same version of the story of the Associated Press story over and over again. So in this particular search, we took out the phrase AP, Associated Press.
Right. Just removing AP stories. Perfect.
Right. Another source that I like, two other things, because I mentioned earlier, this is not just text. So one of my all-time favorite open web resources is the C-SPAN video library.
I knew you were headed there. I'm ready for you. Yep.
This is just about in real time, everything that has ever aired on C-SPAN, updated in just about real time. And unlike other search tools, this search tool not only will allow you to search on the metadata, which is possible, of course, but you can also then search for every single word spoken in these programs. So again, we can take this and then monitor this for new things that might be of interest in our daily curation or a new resource discovery.
Right.
So,
right.
And by the way, another nice feature of C-SPAN Video Library is that when you're sharing these videos with others, you can actually log in, create a custom clip and say, I only want to share this portion of the video with those I'm curating for. It's all free.
Great. Yeah.
Oh,
how about Semantic Scholar?
Semantic Scholar is an incredible resource. It's one of the two, in my opinion, of the open web, if you like, academic search tools out there. This and another one called Lens are, in my opinion, the best two to use. But there are many others, and in some cases you might want to use them. This comes from the Paul Allen Artificial Intelligence Group in Seattle. And I have found this to be an incredibly useful resource, very timely. And again, if you log in, you can create alerts. And if there's one resource that I use quite a bit over the course of a week, both to find new material, academic papers, if you like, for both INFOdocket and for ARL Day in Review, I am discovering a lot of great resources and new papers, I should say, via Semantic Scholar and their email alert feature.
Right. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. How about one or two more, and then we're going to go into actually how we
let me mention another one, and that is, if you scroll down, I believe we have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, how about this one, the Paul Allen School? That's
right. So again, so if we wanted to monitor what's new, what's coming, what are the new videos from the Paul Allen School at the University of Washington that might be of interest? Again, this is the technique I use day in, day out for both of the things that I curate that we shared with you earlier, Day in Review and INFOdocket. So what you can do here, and there are, again, a number of ways to get to the same place, and we'll show you one of them in a little while, but I have alerts set up that anytime a new video is added to the Paul Allen School's YouTube channel, I am alerted to it. So then I can go ahead and share it. And again, that's a great, just curating video and just saying, Professor so-and-so or colleague so-and-so, did you know this was recorded? You can watch this webinar. They did this promo video. You might want to know about it. Just curating that, you're adding a lot of value to your work and to your organization.
And I think just to make it clear, the reason we chose Paul Allen, because University of Washington, in their computer science program, which is the Paul Allen program, has a social futures lab. So that's a futures lab, kind of like the Threat Casting Center, MIT Media Lab. We wanted to get some of those. So again, thinking about serving Dr. Beard, wouldn't he like maybe to know what are some of the other peer institutions doing, or even what's happening on his campus? Like, how often does that happen, right? The one left hand of the right hand of the campus doesn't know what's going on. Kind of classic, almost. So all of this is fair game to scan and so just to step back, look at these resources right here. We've only assembled, what, 17? Do you think even at this stage we'd have value to add, Dr. Beard? Give us a yay or nay in chat. What do you think? Are we already on the right track here?
So
Sharon says yes. Valerie gets a double yay. All right, cool.
So
yeah,
for me, we've talked a lot in this section. For me, one of the most important things I want to make sure that you're leaving with this, we're leaving this section with, is the ability to go to the source.
Right.
That is whatever the topic is, there are organizations, there are people, there are publications that cover that. And unlike the past, you can now monitor those sources using the open web. You don't have to ask somebody, are you putting out this press release? Are you releasing this new report? You can preemptively work to find those sources, add them to some of the tools we're about to talk about, and have the information come to you that then you can go ahead and disseminate.
So let's do that. So but now we talk about which tool to use, and this is where it gets fun and interesting. We're going to feature two tools today that we use frequently, Feedly, and Gary, I think you've got a folder queued up and ready for us, and Gary's going to walk through that, and I'll show Website Watcher. So probably some of you have heard of Feedly. It's an RSS reader, and in one case, Semantic Scholar, we're just going to use good old-fashioned email alerts, and we'll leave that as an exercise to the reader. I think you guys can figure out how to set yourself an email alert. So Gary, why don't we look at Feedly first, and why don't you describe how you've been leveraging this tool?
And before we describe it, it's important that I say, I give a story here. That is, I've only started using Feedly in the last year. For about a decade, I was using another excellent service, which you might want to also look at, called InnoReader. And we can add that, INNOREADER. They're very similar. And to be honest with you, there are features that InnoReader offers that Feedly doesn't. However, why did I switch to Feedly? Feedly, in my work, does a better job and has more tools to remove duplicates and to flush out the most relevant material from the feeds I'm adding to it. They call it Leo. It's their artificial intelligence tool that will do a better job of pulling out the most relevant items for you, so I can give them a higher, what they call a priority. So I can I can use Leo. And this, by the way, there is a free version of Feedly, but a lot of the power of Feedly comes from actually subscribing to the service.
Yeah. And it's not crazy expensive at all, but these are actual ones we use every day, and it's how we kind of curate for our clients right here.
And as you mentioned earlier, Curtis and I for INFOdj also put out a newsletter, and this is exactly how the tool that I use to add material to that folder, and then that Curtis and I work on every couple of weeks to pull out what we're going to add to
I wake up every morning to magic that just like that Leo found or Gary has put in his folder. And I also want to talk about workflow and teams, because folks on this call work in work groups. They're not solo operators. And so you want to have a tool that supports team workflow as well. And Feedly allows you to build a board. The team can all see the board, etc. I think it supports that nicely. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what you threw into this Arizona project folder. So how did you choose these, Amy, and these others here?
Well, first of all, as I've said now several times, there's many different ways to get to the same place. And in some cases, I've got feeds coming to multiple places to make sure I see them. That said, there are two types of feeds we have in our folder here. One, what I will call a native feed. X organization has an RSS or Atom feed. We can discover it and we add it to our project folder. So that's something like, I believe the governor's office website has an actual RSS feed. And we've added it.
I don't know if this is this going to do it, or do I have to
it's already listed there, Curtis.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I just want to, just so folks know, this is what you do. You click that little guy there, it'll already get smart enough and know where you're headed. It'll find that feed for you, and you just pop it in and say, yeah.
Or you can discover the feed, or somebody gives you the URL of the feed, or you discover it on the site. There are, again, many different ways to get the feed actually into Feedly. Then, so that's pretty I think most of the people here can figure out how that works. But what happens if the site, the web page, whatever, does not have what we'll call a native feed? There are tools. One is available via Feedly. There's another service, a competitor, if you like, that does this one extra feature, and that is called RSS.app, RSS.app, that in many cases, not all, but will allow you to create a feed for that particular page or website, even though there isn't a native feed available.
Right.
And there are some of those in here as well.
Well, yeah, and in fact, I think several of them, and in that case, maybe we just use an example.
Yeah, why don't we show how we did this?
Yeah, okay. Should we just take, like, let's start from the Eureka alert. I think that would be a good one. That's when we did that. So take this. Eureka alerts for folks that are not in the Academy on this call. That's a press release of science, right? How do you describe that? Press release database?
They're kind of there's another Alpha Galileo is the European version, but what they are doing is they are aggregating science-related news from universities and other science research organizations. So as you can see here, what we've done here is we've actually created a keyword search in Alpha Galileo, and there isn't a native RSS feed available. So you plop the URL into the box.
Yep.
Curtis
will use RSS Builder.
We'll use the builder. We'll now highlight some results. And now on the right side of the page, you can see all of those headlines. You click Build RSS Feed. And now that we give it a title. And now
this is the stored search. So this is right, because the search is there. So Eureka alerts for veterans issues is what we're getting here.
Right.
There we go. And we put it into the project.
We'll put it into our project folder.
In fact, it's already there. Is it okay to add it twice, Gary?
Sure.
Okay.
And now it'll take a moment or two to
here's what it looks like when it's done. There you go.
So
boom.
Now,
we did it last night.
Anytime a new result comes in for our keyword search into Eureka alerts, we will be notified via RSS. That's simple. Now, in our preparation for today, it's important to point out that this wonderful feature does not work for each and every site. It has a lot to do with the layout of the site itself and the technology the site is using. But whether you use this directly from a Feedly subscription or you subscribe to a service like RSS.app, or for those of you, and I'm sure there are several people on the call who have the coding skills to do it yourself, these tools can add a lot of value in your daily curation routine. Daily curation routine or daily collection building routine.
Right. So Gary, I'm just looking at time. I want to make sure we give equal time to Website Watcher too.
Right.
So while I dial up Website Watcher, can you explain why we sometimes use Website Watcher and what it's for? Buy me 30 seconds.
Website Watcher is the power tool. It is I've been using it now for more than a decade. Part of the DGs now, we have an enterprise account. You don't need one. It costs about $80. for a subscription a year. It's software. It's Windows only software. But if you have any tool that allows you to run Windows apps on Macs, it works well. That's how I'm using it. Website Watcher, as Curtis is firing it up here, will check any web page for even the smallest change. In other words, if it's not only that something on the page has changed, but you can be as specific if you want to say, only notify me of a change if this word is added to the page. Only notify me of a change if this word is removed from the page. But at the same time, this is really, people have said to me when I'm doing ARL Day in Review, they've been very kind and said, how did you know that so fast? Are you just reloading web pages after web pages and you were blessed with a photographic memory? No, this is the tool that I use. I can go through, in the case of ARL Day in Review, at least once a day. I will fire it up and it will go through all 100 and some members of ARL's member organizations, libraries.
Actually, Gary, you've got we're really giving folks a peek behind Gary's curtain here. This is how Gary does his INFOdocket magic. So here's your ARL, 391 organizations you're tracking there.
Well,
higher ed, you're tracking 182.
And it's not just organizations. I've got a few other things, but I can run through those 391 URLs within a matter of minutes. And if anything on the page has changed, depending on what I'm looking for,
let's see what happens.
It will
there it goes.
It will actually notify me if something on the page has changed. Then I can quickly go through them. And when I actually look on the changes, it will highlight what on the page has changed since the last time I ran it.
And so Gary, I have it. I have it set. I changed the program configuration because, okay, I'm a Mac elitist. Okay, no offense to the Windows users here, but the native color on this application is bright red for when it finds a change, which to my mind means red alert, something's wrong. So the first thing I did when I installed Website Watcher was I said, program options, when you find good stuff for me, make it green. So all this green means it's brand new, something new has changed on this site. And it allows me to go, what's happening at VCU libraries? And okay, in this case, there's a date change, but because sometimes there can be small little incremental change, but sometimes it's a big story.
And Curtis has done a lot of work in our INFOdj business to customize our installation. Only show this, don't show that, don't trigger that as a change. And Curtis, I know that there's all sorts of customizations that an organization can do with Website Watcher.
Yeah, and I wish we had time for that. That's our Website Watcher masterclass.
Right.
But I just wanted to show it running. That's actually what you do day in and day out, and we're done. It finished those 391 in a couple minutes. So let's go back to the Arizona project. I've got it here as Charleston demo. And these are the sites. Why did we choose these sites for Website Watcher, Gary, and not Feedly?
Well, one, there wasn't a native RSS feed available. Two, we couldn't use the build your own feed tool. It didn't work, as I said earlier. In some cases, it doesn't work correctly.
Right.
And in some case, and now it's also important to point out another cool feature about Website Watcher. One, you can put any URL of any web page in there. It actually will even log you into paywalled sites and check. Two, It will also work like Feedly will with Twitter. So it will actually convert your Twitter handle. There's Amy Zhang again, or Zhang, and it will convert it. So now you can use this to look for new tweets.
All right, I'm going to run it. Okay. Shall I?
Sure.
Okay, this should go lickety split. I mean, it's going to be like, it does 6 of these at a time. So, and we are, okay, almost there. One left. Ding. Did that sound come through, the ding? Did you hear it?
I heard it.
Okay, so there you go. News lookup. We've got some new results. Let's see what we get. Notice that they will also filter out images. They're doing this to optimize. So if there were images on this page, it would be gray squares. Now, this is a place where we should probably customize this bookmark, Gary, because it's gonna trigger, if you will, false positives, because the fact that maybe there's 617 found as opposed to 15 is not so important. But as we scroll down, if there's a new story like this one, it really does point to us what's changed since we last looked.
Right. So we
might want to go to listen notes. There might be a new podcast that's just appeared. Here's the gray boxes I was talking about. So I'm going to scroll down. Let's see what changed in this case.
We can go to
something.
Perhaps if you go to the
Small.
text tab, if you go to the text tab, we might be able to
Yes.
see.
Yeah. There. Okay.
Again.
So this is one of the right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Explain that.
As you're building up your folder using Website Watcher, there is a learning curve. There is a time, but it's a once and done. Now you can set it up that every time that actual number changes, just don't pay attention to it and don't consider it a change. As you can see here, these are just the basic customization.
They're called ignore updates. So folks, if you got a friendly geek in the house, if you know what regular expressions are, it's not hard, but you can say, look, just filter out for me things that are just numeric changes or date changes. We just didn't have time to do that for the demo today. But
another way to do it is you could just highlight it, right click, and it should say filter.
Right. But there you go.
New
story on the AI.
So there you go. We're monitoring this OECD AI.ai page. We ran it since the time we ran this last night. As you can see, this new entry was made available. Now we can go explore it. There might be a report listed. The news itself might be of value, and we've got it in a matter of seconds.
All right. I think with that, I'd love to do more in Website Watcher, but we should jump back to the third of our pieces here, which is organizing and disseminating. Now that you've found some good stuff, what do you do with it? All right. So let me switch back over there to Keynote. Okay, back to where we were. So here we are now. Okay, so what are some ways we can, now that we're finding good stuff, let's think about Dr. Beard again. What's the best way to serve our client? How about just a personal email? Dear Dr. Beard, we thought this is classic Gary. Gary, I've learned this from you. You start with the magic phrase, thought this might be of interest to you. Are you taught that in library school to say that?
No,
is that how it goes?
That's just me trying to get that, trying to be as in the background as possible and make my value the actual content itself.
Yes,
so,
you do it so well.
Just a couple words, this might be of interest. And again, you don't have to do this for every single time you see something new. You could round them up, you do it once a week, whatever the case might be, whatever works best for you. And also understanding who you're sharing this with. So a personal email can go a long way. And, it really, as I said now a couple of times, if you're betting, 300, 3 out of every 10 that you send does add some extra value with something they haven't seen before, you've made a friend and you've added a lot of value to your organization and to yourself and to your relationship with that person.
Absolutely. Now, we did mention Zotero. Probably a lot of folks are not strangers because it really is anchored in the scholarly community. Comes out of, what is it, George Mason?
George Mason here in the DC area, yeah.
So we did build a Zotero library. Why don't I show that really quickly? So I'm going to share the Zotero here.
And a nice thing about Zotero, in addition to creating, is really not only does it have all the bibliographic tools and create bibliographies and the like, but really what you're doing here is creating your own full text searchable database. So everything you throw in here, whether it be a web page or whether it be a PDF, becomes full text searchable. And again, how do you share it? This alone, creating folders and sharing new material in folders, is another great way to curate and share and disseminate.
Yes, yeah. I'm just throwing in phrases like PTSD. I don't know what's going to come up, but clearly some of these sites have that. So it is full text, which is lovely about Zotero. And as you guys probably know, the Chrome extension or Safari extension, you're in, as you're finding the good stuff, pops it into Zotero and it just does all the metadata. And it's fantastic. We use this with our own clients. These are real client projects of ours.
That said, if you are curating to a series of folders or to just to one folder for a group of people in Zotero, I still think it might be a good idea from a marketing sense to every now and then toss out an email saying, here are 2 or 3 new entries in your Zotero folder.
Yep. So thank you, Leah. Leah just gave me a little time, 10-minute window. So I want to just wrap here, and then we can get into some Q&A if folks want to ask Gary and I some questions. So let me just go back to our deck here and see how we're doing. Gary, and you're going to have to do this fast, okay? Like in 30 seconds or less. Just tell us why Relief Web is awesome and let people look at it later. What is this a great example of here?
Well, this is an organization that is taking disparate sources, often around humanitarian issues, and organizing them all into one place. You can keyword search it. It's really a huge database of humanitarian organizations and their outputs, whether it be a report, a new map, a new chart, that type of thing. It's available via a number of ways, including directly via APIs. And I also want to
why is archiving important?
Everything that I share anywhere is archived by me in the Wayback Machine for everyone. I think 2 reasons. One, we know how quickly resources disappear on the open web, and you're going to share a link with somebody, and by the time they see it, even 3 days later, it might be gone or changed. So I have it built into my workflow, and it's very easily done that every time I save something or I share something, I link to something, the underlying resource is archived by me in Wayback. If for no other reason.
You're also a very good. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a cover your butt situation as well.
Right. Right. And you're a good net citizen. That's what you are. And last,
absolutely. That's the other and thank you. That's the other thing. I think if more people did what I did on an individual basis, it makes any web archive, Wayback Machine or another one, more complete and more robust.
All right, last, and then we'll go to Q&A. What's the big deal with OneTab? Why don't we just tell
OneTab is not only a wonderful way to organize and keep yourself from having 5,000 tabs open and slowing down your system. Well, one of the extra features about OneTab is that say you're in the process of curating a set of resources for people, you can just right-click, save all of those tabs into OneTab, and then with one extra click, get a direct URL to share with those people. So now you can just share that URL with people. Here are the 5 resources I've curated for you right now. Send them that URL, you're done.
So even if, let's say, you didn't have Zotero, you wanted to just give Dr. Beard some really cool things you found this week, and you've got 20 tabs open, click one tab, they're all in a list, click share, send that link to Dr. Beard. He's got a smile on his face. It's amazing. All right, with that, Q&A time. Folks, how did we do? What kind of questions you have? Did this help you reach the goal that you told us about in the beginning? And Leah, I guess you can tell me when things come in.
If things come in.
Oh, they always do. So Kate says, tips for sustainability of work. How you decide who and what to support in this way. So tips for sustainability of this kind of work. Imagine you're going to build a team. You're going to make this an engine of your library. That's a lot of effort. Now, how are you going to sustain that and decide who and what to support in this way?
I think one thing is that you have to break it down into very small groups if you're going to do it as we're discussing. And people might have a beat. These are your 5 things to check via Feedly, via Website Watcher. And I think it's this constant training of new people to help out, so that if other people drop out for whatever reason, there are always new people available. And it doesn't always have to. This is also a great opportunity for students to be contributing as well. There might be student helpers in the library, student workers in the library, or library school students, or students in an individual department that not only can they help you curate on a day in, day out, or week in, week out basis, but you're also sharing the knowledge with them that they can take. It's a bonus piece of education they're getting in their organization.
I love that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I would just say, this is innovation, Curtis speaking. Always start with a pilot, right? Try this out, like we did with Dr. Beard. Whatever that is on your campus or in your context, start small, as Gary said. Try a pilot. We have a question from Mike Ladden. How do you evaluate the information sources themselves, Gary? How do you do that?
I'm looking at reputation of, so I'm using all the traditional metrics the librarian with somebody with a library background would use.
Yeah, well, which are, because not everybody on the call is librarian. So what are these traditional metrics?
The organization? Where are they? Who is the organization? Has the organization received any press, any mentions? Have they been cited in the New York Times? Have they been cited in their local newspaper? Are they cited in any government reports? How frequently are they publishing? All of those metrics go into, all those ideas really, not metrics so much, go into how I determine if this source is useful and worth tracking. But there's not one particular thing. Obviously, too, look at the people who are part of the organization, look at their board of directors, look at where they're getting funding from. That's just some of the things that I'm looking at when I'm going to determine if I'm going to track a particular source or not.
Right. Gary, we have a great question. You're going to snicker when you hear this. Kate Pitsley Souza says, "This is good ideas to explore. I used to use Google custom search engine to create special searches, but it no longer works as well. Do you know of any other free alternatives?"
We'd like to know that too. Curtis, you can speak of this as somebody who has become intimately familiar with Google custom search over the last few months.
Yeah. You're getting my dander. You're getting my dander up here, Kate. Yes. It is.
And I have to say too, that's also been my experience. Not only with Google custom search, the results are not like what they used to be, but it's not even like what they used to be. On Monday, the results can be great and right on target, and then a week later, or if not 5 days later, if not the next day, they're nowhere near as good. And that also has been my experience. While I use, Google News alerts, I have seen that their value varies from day to day and from week to week. They're not as timely as they should be.
Yeah. No, we took, just for Kate's benefit, we took all of the Bethany trade pubs, every URL in Bethany, so like 1,900 URLs, put it into a Google custom search engine. Some, like Gary said, some days it's like, wow, that's the Bethany universe, and we could keyword search it. And other days it is absolutely atrocious. So we can't figure it out. It's a black box, and I won't say we've given up on it. I might try registering for the API, which you get all the program all the sponsored ads out of the way. If you pay for the API, it might give you some extra features. I think we may try that next, actually. All right. Go ahead, Gary. Take us home. Wrap it up.
But no, real quick, Curtis, one of the things you've been experiencing, and I'm learning from you about Website Watcher, is the full text capability that you could be putting your sources into Website Watcher, and then to a certain degree, it can become a full text search engine for those particular pages that you're tracking. Is that somewhat correct?
I think so. I mean, it's getting, like all software, it's getting better all the time. We've gotten to know the developer, Martin Ainsberger, and he's refining and improving that full text search. So it's definitely been giving us some benefit. Camille Gamboa says, "Just want to say one tab might be a game changer for me." She's downloading it right now.
Well, there we go.
So,
thank you, Camille.
There you go. Leah, back to you.
All right. Well, let's see here. I think I'm freezing up here all of a sudden. Can you see me and hear me? Yes, there we go.
Yeah, gotcha.
As soon as I turned on video, everything went black. Well, thank you, Curtis and Gary, for a fascinating time today. This was a great presentation. I learned a lot. Thank you so much to our attendees for being here, for asking great questions, and for participating. As I said earlier, this was recorded. I'll be sending out a link to the video to everybody day after tomorrow. But thank you for attending, and hope to catch you back here next time for our next Charleston webcast. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.